The station hung in space like a small metal seed floating in an endless black ocean. Captain Dai Jung stood at the observation window of the research vessel Celestial Explorer, looking out at the neutral space station where they would soon receive visitors from across the galaxy. He had been a ship captain for 15 years, but today felt different. Today, the humans would be watched by beings they had never met before, aliens who did not understand what it meant to be human. The communications officer, a young man named Tae-O, walked into the observation room with a tablet in his hands. His face showed worry. Dae-jung turned to look at him and waited. The engineer cleared his throat and spoke. "Captain, the Velthar delegation will arrive in 2 hours. Dr. Mi-soon is preparing the welcome area now. She wants to know if you will be at the greeting ceremony." Da-jung nodded slowly. The Velthars were from the Andromeda sector, a people known across the galaxy for their strength and their fierce way of living. They were apex predators, with fur covering their powerful bodies and pointed ears that stood up from their heads. They had claws instead of soft fingernails and eyes that glowed with an intelligent, dangerous light. The stories about them were frightening. They believed that only the strongest deserved to survive. They fought among themselves constantly. They showed no mercy to weakness, but this was supposed to be peaceful contact. The Velthars had asked to study human colonies. They wanted to understand how humans organized themselves, how they managed resources, how they dealt with conflict. No one truly knew why they wanted this knowledge. Many people feared it meant they wanted to find a way to defeat humans in war. Dae-jung had lived through enough uncertainty to know that fear came from not knowing. So he had decided to help show the Velthars who humans really were, not through fancy speeches or powerful weapons, but through honest action. 2 hours later, Dae-jung stood in the welcoming hall with Dr. Mi-soon at his side. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and black hair tied back neatly. She had been the chief administrator of the human settlement for 3 years, and she ran things with calm precision. Next to them stood Park Jin, a young translator with quick reflexes and a good sense of humor. He would speak for them to the Velthars. The airlock doors slid open with a soft hiss. The Velthars emerged. They were taller than humans by almost a head, with broad shoulders and muscular bodies covered in thick gray and brown fur. Their leader walked first, a scarred male with a long cut across one side of his face. His amber eyes swept across the humans, studying them like a hunter studying prey. Behind him came 3 younger Velthars, all males, clearly in training to become warriors themselves. The leader's voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. Park Jin's translator device activated, turning the alien sounds into human words. "I am Commander Vex. These are my teaching cubs. We have come to see how your weak species survives in this harsh galaxy." Dr. Mi-soon stepped forward with a polite smile. "Commander, we welcome you. We hope you will learn much about our ways during your stay. We have prepared sleeping quarters and a full tour of our facilities." Commander Vex's ears flattened slightly, a gesture that Park Jin later explained meant the commander was unimpressed. "We will see. Weakness is easy to spot. Strength is what we seek to understand, though I doubt we will find it here." The humans offered to show the Velthars around the colony. They walked through the agricultural domes where food grew under artificial lights. They visited the water purification systems and the power generators. They showed the defense installations and the medical facilities. The commander asked hard questions about everything. How many humans did each system require? Why were some humans given better positions than others? What happened when a human became too weak to work? Park Jin answered each question carefully, trying to explain human thinking. "We believe everyone has value," he said. "We do not throw away our old or our sick. We care for them because they are part of our community." Vex made a sound that might have been a growl or a laugh. "Your species would never survive where we come from. Such weakness would be eliminated in a single generation. By the time evening came, tension filled the air. The Velthars had seen much, but they understood nothing. To them, human kindness was foolishness. Human cooperation was a failure of strength. Human concern for the vulnerable was a waste of resources. Dr. Mi-sun walked with Dae-jung to the kitchen after the tour ended. The captain was scheduled to prepare the evening meal for the settlement that night. It was his regular turn in the rotation system the humans used. Everyone took turns cooking. Everyone took turns serving. Everyone ate together. "They will be watching us eat," Mi-sun said quietly, her voice filled with worry. "They will see us at our most vulnerable moment, when we are focused on feeding ourselves. Will they see weakness, or will they see something else?" Dae-jung looked at the woman he respected greatly. He understood her fear. The eyes of an entire species were about to judge humanity based on something as simple and ordinary as eating dinner together. "Then we will show them truth," Dae-jung said. "No pretense, no special performance. Just humans doing what humans do. We will show them how we take care of each other." That night, as word spread through the colony that the Velthars would observe the communal dinner, something interesting happened. No one panicked. No one tried to hide anything. The humans simply prepared to do what they did every night. They would prepare food together. They would serve each other fairly. They would eat in peace. In the observation window above the dining hall, 3 young Velthar cubs pressed their snouts against the transparent barrier, their amber eyes growing wide with curiosity. They had never seen anything like what was about to unfold before them. Their father, Commander Vex, stood behind them with his arms crossed, waiting to judge the humans by how they fed themselves. He did not know yet that this moment would change his understanding of strength forever. The kitchen doors opened, and Dae-jung walked in, ready to begin his work. Behind him came the first volunteers to help with the meal preparation. The most important dinner of the human colony was about to begin. Everything now depended on whether a simple act of human kindness could bridge the gap between 2 very different civilizations in the darkness of space. Dae-jung moved through the kitchen with the movements of someone who had done this work hundreds of times before. His hands knew the rhythm without his mind having to think about it. He pulled out the large cutting boards and began arranging his tools in order. Knives of different sizes, bowls for mixing, measuring cups and spoons. Everything had its place, and everything was ready. The hydroponic gardens had produced good vegetables that day, fresh tomatoes, bright red and heavy with juice, green peppers that felt firm under his fingers, carrots with soil still clinging to them from the garden beds. Dae-jung began washing them carefully under the running water, moving each one under his hands, watching the dirt swirl down the drain. The water was cool against his skin, refreshing him. In the colony, water was precious, but not so precious that they went without clean food. Behind him, the kitchen door opened. Haiwon, the young nurse who worked the medical station, entered with her hands already moving to tie back her long hair. She did not ask if she should help. She simply knew that on Dae-jung's cooking days, hands were always needed, and she always came to give them. "Good evening, Captain," she said with a smile. "What do you need first?" Dae-jung smiled back at her. "The grains need measuring and rinsing. Can you prepare 3 batches? The protein will take longer, and we should start the starches early." Haiwon nodded and moved to the grain storage without another word. She knew where everything was kept. She had helped with meals many times herself. Within moments, she was washing the grains in a large bowl, the water becoming cloudy as the starch rinsed away. The rhythm of her work matched the rhythm of Dae-jung's chopping. Chop, 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 rinse, 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 2 different sounds making a kind of music together. Then Tayo arrived, the engineer who had brought the message about the Velthars earlier. He carried containers of cultured protein from the laboratory storage, where the colony grew meat in special tanks instead of raising animals. The protein was efficient, clean, and reliable. Teo set the containers down on a separate counter and began cutting the protein into pieces of uniform size. His engineer's mind appreciated the precision required. Everything should be cut the same size so it would cook evenly. Other people began arriving in the kitchen as the evening progressed. This was how the meal preparation worked in the human colony. One person could not cook for 400 people alone. But with many hands, the work became light and fast. Park Jin arrived with his quick movements and eager energy. He was assigned to prepare the vegetable sauce that would accompany the protein. He chopped the tomatoes carefully, saving the juices to add richness to the sauce. A doctor named Hyo Jin came in with her daughter, a girl named Ji Woo, who was learning to cook by working alongside the adults. The girl was only 12 years old, but she was tall for her age and careful with her hands. Daijung gave her the job of preparing the side dishes, the smaller vegetables that would add nutrition and color to the meal. She worked with serious concentration, her young face focused on doing the work correctly. More people came. A maintenance worker named Kai Tak, a communication specialist named Sun Mi, and an older woman named Eun Ji who had been cooking since before even Daijung was born. Each person found their place in the kitchen. Each person understood their role without needing to be told. The preparation space transformed into a kind of organized chaos that was actually perfect order. Everyone moved around everyone else without collisions or confusion. Someone would need to move to the right, and a person standing there would sense it and step aside. Someone would set down a bowl, and the person next to them would know to move it to the washing station when it was empty. The work flowed like water, smooth and natural. Outside the kitchen, in the observation area above the dining hall, Commander Vex watched everything through the clear windows. The 3 young Velthar cubs stood with their noses almost touching the glass, their eyes wide with amazement. What they were seeing did not match anything in their own experience. Vex's own people prepared meals differently. In Velthar colonies, the strongest warriors took the best portions before anyone else. The weak ate what remained. Cooking was not shared work, but a task assigned to those without fighting strength, a punishment more than a responsibility. Mealtimes in Velthar settlements were dangerous, with constant small conflicts over portions and status. But here, Vex watched as humans laughed together while they worked. He saw a young girl being taught by an older woman how to hold a knife properly. He heard Daejung compliment Haiwan's work and watched her face light up with pride. He saw Taiyou step in to help Kitaik lift a heavy pot without being asked. The captain began to arrange pots and pans on the cooking surface. He had mastered the timing of a large meal. The protein needed 40 minutes, the grain needed 30, the vegetables needed 20. If you started them in the right order, they would all finish at the same moment. Everything synchronized, everything working together. One of the Velthar cubs, the smallest one, made a questioning sound. His father was quiet for a moment before he answered the young one. No, this is not strength as we know it, but look carefully. There is an order here that we have not seen before. The kitchen began to fill with wonderful smells. The protein cooking in its own juices made a savory smell that made mouths water. The grains released a warm, nutty aroma. The vegetables and sauce combined into something complex and rich. Even through the observation windows, the Velthars could smell the cooking food. By the time the meal was nearly ready, Daijung stood at the center of the kitchen with complete calm. Every part of the process was in motion. Every element would finish at exactly the right moment. He had created harmony from individual ingredients, just as these humans had created harmony from individual people working together. Dr. Mi-sun appeared at the kitchen entrance, looking at the progress with satisfaction. She caught Daejung's eye and gave him a small nod. Everything was ready. In just a few more minutes, the first food would be plated and served. The real test was about to begin. The Velthars would not just watch the humans prepare food. They would watch the humans serve it to each other. They would observe how humans divided the portions, who ate first, who ate last, and what that order meant about human strength and human values. Daijong took a breath and began to arrange the serving stations. His hands moved with purpose. Everything he did now would speak for all humanity. Everything he did now would show the Velthars whether humans truly were the weak species they believed them to be, or whether there was something deeper, something stronger, something the Velthars had never seen before in all their long existence as a warrior culture. The serving line began to form in the main dining hall exactly at the scheduled time. But something unexpected happened before the food was even brought out. Instead of pushing and rushing toward the kitchen, the humans formed their line with careful attention to order. The youngest children came first, with their parents standing nearby to help them carry their plates. Then came the oldest members of the colony, those whose bodies had grown slower and less strong with years of work. Commander Vex watched from the observation window and made a sound deep in his throat. Park Jin, the translator, was standing beside him, explaining what was happening. The alien's ears flattened again, showing confusion. Your oldest eat before your strongest? This is backward. This is the way of the defeated and the dying. Park Jin did not argue. He simply nodded and continued watching. It is the way of the humans, he said simply. Daijong stood at the serving station with Haiwan at his side. Together, they would portion out the food to each person who came through the line. The captain's movements were careful and measured. He had already decided how much each person would receive based on their body size, their work demands, and their health needs. A young child received a smaller portion. An adult who worked construction got a larger share of protein. An elderly woman who had been sick recently received an extra serving of vegetables, rich in nutrients. Each person who came to the serving line looked at the portion they received and smiled. No one complained. No one tried to take more. Everyone simply accepted what they were given and moved to a table to sit down. Then the next person came forward. After the youngest and the oldest came the people whose work was physically demanding. The maintenance teams who repaired the station came forward. The engineers who managed the power systems were served. The construction workers who built new sections of the settlement took their plates. These people received larger portions because their bodies burned more energy. Then came the teachers who had spent their day using their minds instead of their bodies, and the administrators like Dr. Mi Sun, who managed the colony. They received moderate portions, enough to sustain them through their mental work. The three young Velthar cubs pressed harder against the observation window as they watched this unfold. The smallest one, barely older than a teenager, made soft questioning sounds. His brothers were silent, their eyes tracking every movement. They were trying to understand what they were seeing, trying to fit it into the framework of strength and weakness that their own culture had taught them. What neither they nor their father understood yet was that this was not weakness. This was planning. This was intelligence. This was something that took far more strength than the Velthar way. As the line continued, something else became visible that caught Commander Vex's attention. Park Jin had quietly entered the serving line with the other people, but he was different. Instead of moving directly to the tables with his plate, he walked down the line of people already eating. He watched their faces carefully. He looked at their portions. And when he saw someone whose plate seemed too small, someone who looked tired or hungry, he would stop and speak quietly to that person. From the observation window, the Velthars could not hear the words, but they could see what happened. A young mother with a crying baby received an extra piece of protein that Park Jin quietly placed on her plate. An old man who was recovering from injury was given more grain to provide extra strength. A girl who was studying hard for advancement received extra vegetables to help her concentration. The translation of his actions was clear. Some humans were being given more than others, not because they were stronger or fought harder, but because they needed more help. Commander Vex stood very still, watching this process. His claws extended slightly from his hands and then withdrew again, a sign of his internal conflict. In his own culture, the strong took what they wanted, and the weak received what remained. The idea of the strong deliberately giving more to the weak was completely foreign to him. It was either deception or madness. It had to be. But the process continued smoothly. The strong did not rebel. The weak did not fight to take what was not offered to them. Everyone ate. Everyone was satisfied. The meal continued without conflict or violence or competition. When the serving station was empty and all the humans had been fed, something remarkable occurred to all the observers. There was still food left in the holding containers. The human preparing the meal had made enough food for everyone with extra remaining. Nothing had been wasted. Nothing had been fought over. Then all eyes turned to Dae-jung, the captain who had prepared the meal. The humans who were already seated in the dining hall became quiet, noticing that their leader had not yet taken a plate for himself. They watched as Dae-jung looked at the remaining food, then looked at the serving station. Hae-won pressed a plate into his hands, encouraging him to eat while the food was still warm. But Dae-jung shook his head and continued working. He began cleaning the cooking stations, washing the pots and utensils, putting away the unused ingredients. Only after every piece of equipment was clean and organized did he finally allow himself to prepare a plate. He was the last to eat. When this fact registered with Commander Vex, the alien commander went completely silent. His amber eyes narrowed. His tail, which had been moving slightly with agitation, became completely still. He was absolutely motionless, processing what he had witnessed. A full minute passed without anyone speaking. Then Vex turned to face Park Jin directly. When he spoke, his voice was different. It was no longer dismissive. It was thoughtful. "In my species," Vex said slowly, "we have many beliefs about what makes a strong leader. A strong leader must eat the largest portion. A strong leader must eat first. A strong leader must demonstrate his power by consuming the best of everything. Only the weakest leaders eat last, and eating last is a mark of failure and shame." Park Jin listened carefully, understanding where this was leading. "But this human," Vex continued, looking down at Dae-jung sitting alone at the serving station, eating his meal after everyone else was already satisfied. "He chose to eat last. He worked while others ate. He served others before himself. This is the opposite of strength as we understand it." The Velthar commander paused, and his next words came slowly, with difficulty, as if his mind was struggling to accept something completely new. "And yet," Vex said, "I see no weakness in what I have witnessed. I see no fear. I see no desperation. The humans follow this leader without force. They work together without threats. They succeed without competition." He turned back to look at the dining hall where humans were finishing their meals and clearing their plates, already beginning to help each other clean up, even though they were not assigned to do so. "This is not weakness," Vex finally said. "This is something we have never encountered before, something we have no word for in our language. But it is not weakness." His 3 cubs heard these words from their father, and they moved closer together, their young minds already beginning to question everything they had been taught about what strength truly meant. The dining hall had become quiet as humans finished eating and began their evening routines. Some talked together over their remaining food, others cleared plates and brought them to the washing station. A few remained seated, simply enjoying the warmth of the room and the company of their fellow colonists. The air smelled of cooked food and human presence. It was a peaceful scene, ordinary in every way to the humans who lived it daily, but extraordinary to the 3 Velthar cubs who were still watching from the observation area. Commander Vex stood with his arms crossed, his scarred face thoughtful. His internal conflict was clear to anyone who understood Velthar expressions. The way his ears kept moving back and forth showed uncertainty. The slow swaying of his tail showed deep contemplation, but he did not leave the observation window. He continued watching. Dae-jung finished eating his meal and stood to carry his plate to the washing area. As he walked through the dining hall, various colonists acknowledged him. A young man named Ki-byom touched his shoulder briefly in a gesture of respect and gratitude. An older woman named Hyo-sung smiled at him warmly. People made small gestures of connection. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced. Just humans recognizing each other. The captain paused beside a table where a group of younger workers were discussing the next day's tasks. He listened to their concerns about the water filtration system and offered suggestions based on his long experience. His leadership was not based on giving orders that had to be obeyed. It was based on sharing knowledge that helped others succeed. The young workers thanked him genuinely, already improving their plan based on what he had said. This was the moment when Haiwan approached Commander Vex in the observation area. The young nurse had been sent by Dr. Mi-sun to invite the Velthar leader to observe more closely if he wished. The invitation was polite and offered freedom of choice. Vex could refuse, or he could step into the human space. Either way would be accepted. The translator device activated. Haiwan's words came through in Velthar language, spoken perfectly with the help of the technology. Commander Vex, the humans would welcome your presence in the dining hall. You and your teaching cubs may observe more closely if you desire. There is no requirement. We simply invite you if you are interested. Vex looked at the young nurse carefully. She showed no fear. There was no tension in her body language. She simply waited for his answer with genuine kindness in her eyes. This confused him further. In his experience, humans in the presence of a powerful Velthar should show fear or deference, but Haiwan showed neither. She simply respected him as another being. The smallest of the three cubs made a questioning sound, looking up at his father. Without speaking, Vex turned and walked toward the observation window exit. His three teaching cubs followed immediately. The door opened, and the four Velthars stepped into the human dining hall. The humans did not jump or show alarm at the sudden presence of four large, powerful aliens in their midst. They simply acknowledged the visitors and continued with their evening. Some people smiled. Others nodded respectfully. No one approached aggressively. No one showed fear. Haiwan guided the cubs toward a table where several people were still sitting and eating. "These are humans who would like to meet you," she said to the young cubs. "Would you like to sit and learn about human food?" The smallest cub looked back at his father. Commander Vex made a low sound in his throat that Park Jin explained as permission. The three young Velthars approached the table hesitantly. An elderly woman named Eun-ji smiled and gestured to the empty seats beside her. Without another word, the cubs sat. What followed was not a formal diplomatic exchange. It was simply humans and young Velthars sharing a table and a moment. Eun-ji, who had cooked many times in the colony's kitchen, began explaining the meal. She pointed to different foods and told the cubs what each ingredient was and where it came from. "This grain grows in our hydroponic gardens. We control the light and water completely, so we can grow food in space. The protein comes from our laboratory. We grow meat without needing animals." The smallest cub listened intently. His ears perked forward with interest. His older brothers were more cautious, but they too began to understand that this was not a threat. This was sharing. Teo, the engineer, had also approached the table. He began drawing diagrams on a napkin, showing the cubs how the hydroponic system worked. The water circulated, carrying nutrients to the plant roots. The lights provided energy for growth. The entire system was closed, recycling water and nutrients constantly. Nothing was wasted. Everything was reused. The eldest of the three cubs leaned forward, genuinely interested. "You grow food and water without soil? How is this possible?" Teo explained patiently. his engineer's mind enjoying the challenge of describing a complex system to someone new. The cub asked more questions, then more. The conversation became animated, with the young Velthar trying to understand human agricultural innovation. Park Jin sat across from Vex, who had also taken a seat at a human table. The commander did not eat, but he watched everything carefully. Around them, humans continued their evening. Some played games on small electronic devices, others read books or articles on tablets. A few simply talked, sharing the events of their day. "Why do you do this?" Vex asked suddenly. "Why do you gather together to eat? Why do you share work preparing food? In my civilization, this would be seen as inefficient. A single worker could prepare food, and it could be consumed in military efficiency." Park Jin considered the question carefully before answering. "Because we are not just bodies that need fuel, Commander. We are people who need connection. When we eat together, we are not just nourishing our bodies. We are strengthening our bonds as a community. When we work together to prepare food, we are teaching each other, learning from each other, becoming stronger as a group." Vex was quiet for a long time. His claws extended and withdrew again. In our culture, such behavior would be seen as wasteful sentiment. But I am beginning to understand that perhaps we have been wrong about many things. A woman named Min Hee approached with a plate of traditional human dessert, a sweet preparation made from fruit and nuts. She offered it to Vex without any expectation that he would accept. "Would you like to try human food made specifically for enjoyment, Commander? No nutritional purpose, just something that brings pleasure." Vex looked at the dessert with confusion. Food made for enjoyment? Food that served no purpose except to create pleasure? This was so contrary to his understanding that he was silent for several seconds, but then slowly he reached out and took a small piece. The taste was strange to his alien palate, but it was not unpleasant. The sweetness was different from anything he had experienced, and the act of being offered food without demand, without expectation of payment or service in return, affected something deep in his consciousness. His 3 cubs had also been offered dessert by the humans. The smallest one was smiling, actually smiling, while he ate the sweet food. Vex had rarely seen his teaching cubs show such simple pleasure. In their culture, joy was dangerous. It showed weakness. But here, surrounded by humans who seemed strong in their own way, his cubs were learning that pleasure and strength were not opposites. As the evening continued, the humans shared more with the Velthar visitors. They showed them how their settlement was organized. They explained their system of shared responsibility. They described how they solved problems through discussion rather than force. They demonstrated how young ones learned from old ones and how knowledge was passed forward. Commander Vex listened to everything, processed every word, observed every interaction, and slowly, a transformation began in his mind. Not a complete rejection of his culture, but a questioning, a wondering, a realization that strength might come in forms he had never imagined. As the evening ended and the humans began retiring to their quarters, Haywan walked the Velthars back toward their assigned sleeping area. The cubs were sleepy, but satisfied. Vex was silent, lost in thought. At the door to their quarters, the commander turned to face the young nurse one final time. "Thank you," he said. The translator struggled slightly with the Velthar word, but the meaning was clear. "You have shown us something today. I do not yet understand what it is, but I know now that I have much to learn about strength from your kind." The second day of the Velthar delegation's visit began differently than anyone expected. Commander Vex requested that his 3 cubs be allowed to participate in the daily work of the colony, not as observers, but as learners. Dr. Misun agreed immediately, assigning different humans to work with each young Velthar and show them the details of human settlement life. The smallest cub, who had shown the most curiosity about food and agriculture, was assigned to work with Teo in the hydroponic gardens. The engineer woke early and brought the young alien to the greenhouse domes before most of the colony was awake. The air in the dome was warm and humid, filled with the smell of growing plants. Sunlight through the transparent panels created a landscape of green and growing life. Teo showed the cub how to check the water systems, how to monitor nutrient levels, how to prune plants carefully to encourage better growth. The young Velthar's claws, which were sharp enough to rip apart prey, moved with surprising gentleness on the delicate plant stems. Teo explained that even strength must be controlled and directed with intelligence. Raw power meant nothing without knowledge and purpose. When you use strength only for destruction, you become a predator, Teo said, working alongside the cub. But when you use strength to help things grow, you become a protector. This is what we are here. We protect the things that are vulnerable, and through protecting them, we protect ourselves. The middle cub was assigned to the medical facility where Haywan worked. This cub was more cautious and serious than his smallest brother, but his interest was genuine. Haywan showed him the diagnostic equipment, explained how humans detected illness and injury, and described the process of healing. The cub watched as Haywan treated a child who had scraped his knee. The human nurse cleaned the wound, applied medicine, and bandaged it carefully. Throughout the process, she spoke to the child with gentleness and reassurance. It will hurt for only a moment, and then it will feel better. You are very brave. The child held still, trusted her completely, and after the treatment, hugged her before running off to play. The Velthar cub processed this interaction carefully. In his own culture, pain was a sign of weakness to be endured alone, but here, pain was met with comfort and support. Here, vulnerability was not exploited, but cared for. The eldest cub was assigned to the administration office with Dr. Mi-sun. He was shown the systems that managed the entire colony, the way resources were allocated, how decisions were made. Dr. Mi-sun invited the cub to sit in on a meeting where colonists discussed a problem with the water recycling system. The meeting was fascinating to the cub. No single voice dominated. Each person with knowledge about the problem was allowed to speak. Even young Kibiom, who had only been in the colony for a year, was invited to share his idea. His suggestion was taken seriously and discussed carefully. The group did not accept his solution immediately, but neither did they dismiss it. Instead, they tested it against their knowledge and understanding, eventually adapting part of his idea into their final plan. Dr. Mi-sun watched the cub's reaction carefully. "This is how we make decisions," she explained. "Not through the strength of a single leader, but through the knowledge of many people. We are stronger together because we gather the wisdom of all our individuals." Back at the dining hall, Dae-jung was preparing the midday meal. This time, many humans stopped by the kitchen to help. But something new happened. The 3 Velthar cubs, having finished their morning work, arrived and asked if they could participate in the food preparation. Dae-jung welcomed them without hesitation. He assigned each cub a different task. The smallest one, who had spent the morning in the gardens, worked with the vegetables, remembering what Teo had taught about careful handling. The middle cub, trained by Haywan, carefully measured portions and ensured cleanliness in all food handling. The eldest cub, educated by Dr. Mi-sun, worked on planning the meal's timing, coordinating different elements so they would finish together. For the first time, Velthars worked directly alongside humans in a collaborative effort. There were moments of confusion when the cub's strength nearly broke delicate kitchen equipment. Haywan gently taught them to control their power, to be aware of their own strength, and adjust it for the task at hand. This was revelatory to the cubs. Their entire training had been focused on maximizing their strength. The idea of moderating it, of using exactly the right amount of force for each situation, had never been taught to them. Park Jin stood nearby, quietly documenting everything. He knew that the implications of what was happening were significant. These young Velthars were beginning to think differently about what strength meant. They were learning that the strongest warriors were not necessarily those who could destroy the most, but those who could control themselves completely. When the meal was ready and the humans formed the serving line, something remarkable occurred. The three young Velthars stood with the humans, and they served alongside Daejong. The smallest cub carefully placed vegetables on each plate, remembering which elders liked the green ones and which preferred root vegetables. The middle cub worked on portions, using the knowledge of health and healing to ensure each person received what their body needed. The eldest cub coordinated everything, ensuring the flow of the serving line was smooth and efficient. Commander Vex observed from a distance, and for the first time since his arrival, his expression showed something other than skepticism. It showed wonder. His three cubs were not just observing human civilization anymore. They were becoming part of it, understanding it from the inside, learning what it meant to contribute to something larger than themselves. When the serving line ended and all the humans had been fed, Daejong once again cleaned the serving station before eating his own meal. But this time, the three Velthar cubs cleaned alongside him. They washed the pots. They organized the cooking equipment. They worked with Daejong in the simple, repetitive movements of finishing the job properly. This act of service, of choosing to work after others had been served, seemed to affect the cubs deeply. When Daejong finally sat down to eat his meal, the smallest cub sat beside him. There was no awkwardness. There was no discomfort. There was simply the natural comfort of beings who had worked together, who had contributed together, who understood that they were part of something meaningful. That evening, as the sun set outside the observation windows and cast long shadows across the station, Commander Vex stood alone in the observation area. His mind was processing everything his cubs had learned. His entire framework for understanding strength was being challenged. He still did not fully accept it. His culture's values were deeply rooted. But for the first time, he was genuinely questioning whether those values were correct. Park Jin found him standing there, looking out at the stars. The translator approached respectfully and stood beside the Velthar leader without speaking. Finally, Vex turned to him. "My cubs will be different when we return home," Vex said slowly. "They have tasted a different way of being strong. They will carry this knowledge back to our people. Some will reject it. Some will be fascinated by it. The outcome is uncertain." Park Jin nodded, understanding the weight of what Vex was saying. "Change is always uncertain, Commander. But the seed has been planted, and seeds grow if given time and care." Vex made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Seeds. Yes, your species knows about growth. My people know only about conquest. Perhaps that is why we have never truly understood what it means to build something that lasts, something worth protecting." The two beings stood together in silence, watching the stars, each understanding that they had witnessed something that would have consequences neither could fully predict.